So what are those things that we absolutely need? What are those things that we need? Well, we need air. We need water. We need food. We need sleep. We need clothing, sometimes more of it than other times. We need shelter. These all come to us from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. His hierarchy is criticized boldly and appropriately. It's mostly criticized for being a hierarchy. He understands these needs to be the lowest, the root of the pyramid. Life doesn't fit neatly into a hierarchy. The Egyptians, they built pyramids. Our needs, they flow from us like streams. They explode from us like supernovas. They move from us like the steam of our spirits. But Maslow's needs themselves, they still make sense if we're willing to topple the pyramid. He starts with air, water, food, sleep, clothing, and shelter. I'd taken myself one time on a solo hiking trip, and a few days in, I took my water filter and I dipped it in the stream to get some water for myself, and then the tube of the water filter broke off and went downstream with all the white water. And I watched it. I may have even waved. And then I realized, there goes my water. And I'm a good 12, 15 hours from the next place to get clean water. And every single moment thereafter, my spirit pretty much just said, water. That was the only thing I could think about, the only need that I had. If I got lost in the woods, I might not get the water I needed to survive. Water, water. If air, if water, if food, if sleep, if clothing and shelter are accounted for, we may then begin to seek safety, personal safety, financial safety, health and well-being, or safety in our bodies. You know, Unitarian Universalist interns, when we're training for the ministry, we don't have much financial security. For my internship year, I lived in a barn, literally, in a 12 by 12 converted stall. It was a beautiful barn. There were beautiful views of the San Jose Valley, but my nearest neighbors were indeed horses. I ate a lot of cabbage, and I smelled a little funny. I could still tell you, though, like Thoreau did with his work on Walden, what exactly I spent every single month. I could tell you all of the numbers, and I don't remember numbers, do I, Reverend Scott? I could tell you all of these because I had to be so focused that entire time on my financial security. If we have safety, if we have financial, if we have personal and health, safety, security, Maslow says we then seek social belonging. There's friendship, there's connection, there's family. Now here is where Maslow's pyramid wholly fails. Connection. Connection is one of the rungs that he puts out there, a step somewhere in the middle. The truth is, connection is elemental. It is a need that runs through all of the other needs. Connection serves the cause of security. True connection, beautiful connection makes us healthy. Connection gives meaning to our search for air, for water, for food, for shelter. connection to our own nature, connection to others, connection to whatever we understand as ultimate or holy. This is not a rung, but the hub that holds all the spokes of our needs sturdy. Finally, Maslow offers the needs with very little tactile presence. He shares esteem, the yearning to be valued, self-actualization, the realization of our potential, and finally, self-transcendence, the giving of ourselves to a higher goal outside of ourselves. Jack Drucker, with his poems, spoke of self-transcendence, lifting himself from the yearning after personal needs to experiencing the harmony his soul could share with others. Lifting himself, transcending himself to and with the harmony of connection. I preached a sermon once on gluttony, one of a series on a Unitarian Universalist take on the 7 deadly sins. I was preaching to one of our congregations in a wealthy suburb outside of Washington, D.C., speaking of the choice that we have to choose between material or spiritual sustenance. That morning, one of the visitors, and this only happens outside of Washington, D.C., one of the visitors was the vice president of the nation of Ghana. She approached me after the service and she said, It's clear how different it is to live here than in my country. This sermon," she said, "this sermon is for this people. Many of my people do not have a choice. The wealth at hand is not tactile. It is not food. It is not luxury. It is community. It is love. They don't have a choice. They must seek spiritual sustenance, self-transcendence, or they will not have anything to live for."
Vice President of Ghana taught us the wealth at hand, and she wasn't speaking of just her country, is community, love. She said, "In my country, there's little choice. We must seek spiritual sustenance, self-transcendence, or we might have little to live for." Isn't it a great gift to have someone outside our culture and experience remind us how many of our basic assumptions are conditioned, if not determined, by the very culture into which we are born? It's so easy to forget that difference between wants and needs, between what makes life sweeter and what makes life possible and rich. In affluent cultures like ours, it's easy to mistake wants for needs. This is a phenomenon that Karl Marx called manufactured needs, and he doesn't mean that they were made in a factory. These are things we're told by commercial interests that we need when actually they're extras, window dressing. And it's just that we get distanced from what is essential when we think that we need more than we do. These manufactured needs create anxiety for us and drive us to work more hours, to acquire more stuff, to get a larger house, to put all our new stuff. And when you speak to folks who are engaged in this struggle, you'll find they're not always fulfilled. Indeed, without creating more time in our lives to just be instead of do, we mistake what Jack Drucker so eloquently calls the disruption of longing, the call of our true selves. We miss that call to rise above the distractions and the stuff into deeper authenticity. So often in our drive to complete our to-do list, we become deafened to the call of our very souls. And then there are the times when we become so caught up in what is happening in the world that we forget to love our very lives. A cartoon from Corvallis shows one person sitting in a sandbox making sandcastles. And then a friend of his runs in screaming, "Don't you know what's going on in the world? It's called life. There are issues. How can you sit there building sandcastles?" And the friend quietly replies, "Sorry, building this thing here, I sort of forgot about life. Maybe I was just living." And of course, we must pay attention to world events, to changes in public policy, to injustices and outrages of all varieties. But if we don't leave room for ourselves to connect, to love, to build community, seek self-transcendence, we will wither under the burden of manufactured anxiety. None of us can cure the ills of culture and government alone. None of us can do it 24/7, 365. If we seek not what nurtures, we will run ourselves ragged, make ourselves ill, and we might become more difficult to be around. If we fail to seek perspective about what we deem important, we chase those shiny things and diminish our capacity for wholeness. But the beauty, the great gem at the center of what Juliet Schor calls true wealth, is social capital. That's when we tend to what is necessary for our health, the spiritual, emotional, intellectual, physical health. Yes, because they're all connected. When we devote ourselves to love, to self-transcendence, to spiritual nurture, to community, we do the work that can help restore others. This is social capital. Often the most important thing most of us can do. At times when so many are rightfully concerned for the direction of our country, our culture, the tenor of our public discourse, one great thing we can do now is to come here, bring your families and your whole selves. Devote our time, talent, and treasure to build here a sanctuary of the Spirit that is a transformational hub of community. This is because we save the world one soul at a time, beginning with our own. And from there, we reach outward to the congregation, our neighbors, our family, our nation, our world. So what is worthy of your most sincere devotion? What calls you to engage and give what you can that serves you in return? What will make you choose life instead of that which brings you death and distraction? Maybe it's building community, strengthening bonds of friendship and affection, even honing those programs, practices, and facilities of this, our mothership of community, as I like to call it. This calls for our devotion, and I see you give it every day. That which gives life to us is holy. Building what gives life to others is the holiest of work. There is so much to live for: love, joy, beauty, family, transformation, justice making. Sometimes it takes someone outside our culture to show us the truth, to give us permission for the disruption of longing to prod us into beauty, to give away the precious stone as the wise woman did in our story. And sometimes it's a change in world events, a new relationship, or joining a worthy institution. Through these, we discover what is worth our sincere devotion. To what are you truly devoted? How do you measure true wealth? in your giving, in your encounter, how do we know we are truly living?
When Reverend Scott asks, "To what are you devoted?" what I hear is, what are you living for? What are you living for? Though this is a question that reverberates through my theology and my ethics, as I know it does for Reverend Scott, it is paradoxically only in those very rare and precious moments when I feel that my life shouts its answer. When my father was recovering from his heart attack, I was living for him. When I have the profound honor of officiating at a memorial service, I am living for the family and the friends and for the dignity of the life that has been lost. When I see cruelty being done, and I have the power to intervene in a proximate and deliberate manner, I am living for the alleviation of suffering. When someone disrespects my husband, my mother, someone that I unconditionally love, something you might not expect in me is born. A mini Hulk with all of its green fury emerges. I am ready to defend, to live for the reaffirmation of my loved one's dignity. Pray you never see that in me. Perhaps you have lived through moments like these, where what you are living for is unavoidable. Your soul's screaming. There are so many other moments to our lives, though, when what feels pressing lacks gravity, but presses all the same. A want masquerading as a need. This doesn't mean that purpose is absent, that the sole thrust of our life is negated, or I should say, it doesn't have to mean that. If we are born to suffering and cannot escape oppression, we may choose to live for the heaven to come, for the sweet chariot coming for to carry us home. If we are born to the privilege of having many of our needs met, if we have the freedom to explore the meaning of life, and if life for us feels in moments like a gift, we may choose to live for this moment or the next, for something accessible here and now. You are here this morning. You have come, I believe, in part to explore how to live and what to live for. To ask, who am I and why am I? To understand your life so you might use it fully. Yes? Yeah. And perhaps you see your life as part and parcel of the holy or of God. Or perhaps you see your life as a drop in the cosmic bucket, a splash of stardust, one fragment dancing in the out-breath of the Big Bang. We may be motes, we may be tiny, but we are motes rising. When I go back through that list of experiences where the meaning, the direction of my life was wholly self-evident, I begin to see a pattern. Living for my father after his heart attack, honoring a dear departed at a memorial, defending a dear one's dignity, and so on, all of these begin with connection. They all begin with connection. And they assert a wholehearted embrace of this life, a whole-spirited love of this gift that we have been given. I am When I am living for something, absolutely and truly, unmistakably, I am living simply, very simply, for this life. It's as simple as that. My philosophy professors would not like the circularity of this argument, but it speaks my truth. It is my embrace of life that gives my life its gravity. It is my embrace of life when I pull it towards me and make it warm with my love that makes it feel worthy, whole, deliberate, and holy. That's something I can remember when I am checking off the items on my to-do list. That's something I can remember when I'm shoveling a pile of rock-hard snow. If I choose to, that's how I might live for life. Amen.